Welcome to another edition of the Sports View with Richard Holdridge. Happy Monday. So glad to be here. Had a busy weekend, work conflict, but I'm glad to be back in the fold and getting ready to talk sports with you here on episode 963 as I get ready to approach 1,000 episodes. It'll happen in a couple of months, but I'm excited to give you the national and local sports to Columbus. I've kind of retooled my show a little bit. I've changed up some graphics. As you can see, I don't have the overlay underneath the graphics, but don't forget to like and subscribe to the Facebook channel and YouTube channel as I do a show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Now, Mondays and Friday shows are going to be on the Sports Beats Facebook page, and then Wednesday show will be on the Georgia Alabama Sports Live's Facebook page. So you want to check that out. Every Wednesday, 5 o'clock is when the show is going to start. I've been getting a lot of support, a lot of fans as I grow my audience. And if you are interested in being a sponsor of the Sports Beat, we have some fantastic packages. I know that I'm going to throw in any sponsors I get for Georgia Alabama Sports Live. I'm going to throw in additional sponsorship for the Sports Beat. You'll have a graphic of your company that's going to be up on screen the whole time. And I'm also going to go to your place of business and shoot a 30-second commercial. That's what I do. And I want to give these local companies in the Columbus area some love. And that's really what we're all about. And those companies that support us and what we do at Georgia Alabama Sports Live, I want to give back. And hopefully we can get some sponsorships for this show because I like having breaks on the show, and I would like to run a commercial break rather than PSAs, and I think that it would be helpful for your company. So we've got a lot to talk about here on the show. I'm going to talk about the college football semifinals, preview the national championship, also going to talk about NFL wildcard weekend, as this is day 5 of 5 incredible football days of fantastic playoff action. Also, later on in the show, I'm going to get into the high school basketball that happened over the weekend, preview what's going on Georgia Alabama Sports Live, and then I'm going to close out the show talking a little NBA and college basketball. But let's not waste any time, and let's dive right into the show. It is January 13th, 2025, and let's go ahead and talk about that first semifinal game that happened on Thursday. It was Notre Dame end up getting the 27-24 victory over Penn State. And Drew Allard made just a bonehead play when it was tied at 24. He wanted to throw it away, but an interception, and Notre Dame got gift-wrapped. Great field position. They kicked the game-winning field goal. They're back in the national championship for the first time since 2013. And this was an exciting game. You know, I watched it, and I think that, two similar teams, Notre Dame and Penn State, and I seriously thought that Notre Dame was going to lose this game because, Penn State had the better quarterback. But, Riley Leonard has proven that he's a pretty good quarterback. And you talk about, like, Penn State goes up 10-0, and then Notre Dame comes up and they get 17 unanswered. And then Nicholas Singleton, 2 touchdown runs, and now all of a sudden Penn State's up 24-17. And then how about Jaden Greathouse, a 54-yard pass from Riley Leonard. Mitch Jeter walks it off with a 41-yard field goal. Yeah, Drew Allard did make that critical mistake in the fourth quarter. I thought that Nate Singleton had a very good game, Nicholas Singleton rather, not the receiver for the 49ers. Nicholas Singleton had 3 rushing touchdowns. Ty Warren was a pretty good tight end. And, the narrative for Penn State is now James Franklin can't win the big game. That Penn State had an easy schedule leading up to the semifinals. They beat SMU. They beat Boise State. Now you're playing one of the big boys, and James Franklin can't get the job done. But here's the thing. This game could have gone either way. We could end up seeing Penn State at the national championship. But Notre Dame, how about Marcus Freeman and the job that he has done? He goes 9-4 in his first season, and Marcus Freeman has got Notre Dame in the national championship where they will face Ohio State on January the 20th in Atlanta. I got plenty of time to preview that game. That is going to be an exciting game. Congratulations to Notre Dame as they defeat Penn State. Now let's talk about the other semifinal game that happened on Friday, where the Ohio State Buckeyes, they were actually in a battle with the Texas Longhorns, and this was going back and forth. Texas tied it at 7, and when Texas tied it, and then they gave up that touchdown in the first half, and Ohio State went up 14-7. I really pinned that on Sark. I mean, his decision-making as far as X's and O's, and the fact that Arch Manning didn't even get playing time is kind of a head-scratcher. But Travion Henderson, that little screen pass from Will Howard to go up 14-7. Jaden Blue, ties it at 14. Quinn Ewers, he struggled a little bit. He did have the one interception. So did Will Howard. And, the run games, by the way, the run games did not get going for either team. That just tells you how good the defensive line for both schools are. And really, the score could have been a lot closer. Texas was down 21-14. They had a 1st and goal, and then they had a 2nd and goal. And probably the most head-scratching call I've ever seen on a goal-to-go situation, a toss sweep to the left. Ohio State ends up getting it for negative yardage, and then we all know about the scoop and score by Jack Sawyer, who becomes an Ohio State legend. Jack Sawyer takes it all the way to the house. Quinn Ewers throws an interception, and Ohio State back in the national championship, and where they won it all back in 2014. The Ohio State Buckeyes, Ryan Day gets the Ohio State Buckeyes in the national championship. They feel they should have won it 2 years ago, because if Marvin Harrison Jr. does not get injured in that game, I do think they beat Georgia, and then they go on to beat TCU in the national championship. Now, whatever, Desmond Howard on College Game Day say, if Ohio State wins the national championship, people are going to forget about the loss to Michigan. Well, Desmond Howard says, no, they're not going to forget about the loss to Michigan. Michigan fans are going to continue to remind them that Ohio State has lost to Michigan their last 4 tries. But a national championship, I feel, would solidify losing to Michigan 4 straight times, and it really keeps Ryan Day's job safe because he will have won a national championship. Now, Ohio State is a pretty big favorite against Notre Dame, and I will get into this game, but I do want to talk about just the shortcomings of Texas, because Texas feels that they should have won this game. But where was Arch Manning? I think now that Quinn Ewers has declared for the NFL draft, Texas is going to have to put the ball in Arch Manning's hands. I think he's a little bit more mobile quarterback. Texas is going to recruit. They're going to be one of the top teams in the SEC, and I do think that Texas is going to be back. I feel bad for Texas Longhorn fans who thought that they had this game, especially in their own backyard in Dallas. The home field advantage favored Texas, but Ohio State ends up winning this game. And now, next Monday, we've got the national championship. And if you're from the North, this is a dream scenario. These two schools have played 8 times. Ohio State has won the last 6. Recently, they had a home-and-home with Notre Dame back in 2023. That was in South Bend. And then in 2022 to open up the season, where Ohio State that year lost their last 2 games of the regular season. But that was one of those games where it was a little bit closer, 21-10. But then in 2023, they go to South Bend, and Kyle McCord becomes a legend because he marches Ohio State down, and they end up defeating Notre Dame. I think this is going to be a lot closer than people expect, because Notre Dame is a very smart team under Coach Marcus Freeman. Riley Leonard is a pretty good mobile quarterback. If Notre Dame does not make the mistakes, I think they match up well with Ohio State. But this is Ohio State's national championship to lose. They brought in all these players and paid them $20 million in NIL to win a national championship. They don't get to this point and not win the national championship. I think Ohio State does win the national championship, and it's going to be just a fantastic game. And I know that the location in Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I know that there are some Ohio State and Notre Dame fans that live in the area. I've already talked to some of them. So they're not even going to waste their time trying to buy tickets, because right now the cheapest ticket is going for $2,000 on StubHub. And that is just a little rich for my blood. And I know that's a little rich for other sports fans' bloods. But, hey, that's why I'm a member of the media, and I try to get media passes as much as I can. But, yeah, this one, because there's not a local team in the area, yeah, media passes are going to be hard to come by. But we do have two teams from the north that are going down to Atlanta. And this is going to be the first time that a national championship has kind of been misplaced since Alabama and Clemson played in Santa Clara, where they don't care about college football. And I know that talking to people that were in the San Francisco Bay Area had no idea the national championship was being played in Levi Stadium. That was back in 2019. But this year, Notre Dame, Ohio State has won the last 6, but Notre Dame trying to win a national championship for the first time since 1988 when Lou Holtz was the coach and Tim Brown won the Heisman Trophy. But Ohio State, remember, they won the national championship back in 2014 when they beat Oregon with their third-string quarterback, Cardale Jones. Urban Meyer was the coach back then. Remember, Ryan Day was the coach in waiting. When Urban Meyer left Ohio State, there was a lot of speculation. Is Ryan Day the right guy? Look at his winning percentage. Ryan Day is clearly the right guy, just can't figure out the Michigan thing. I mean, 0-4 against Michigan. And by the way, the last time that Ohio State played Notre Dame in 2022, they lost to Michigan. So looking at this game, I'm excited about it. And really, to have college football all the way up until January 20th, it's MLK Day. The kids are going to be out of school. It's just a great time to actually get on the show next week, because I will have a special show, even though we've got some basketball games to cover on Georgia Alabama Sports Live later in the afternoon. I will have a show on MLK Day, and I will preview the national championship. All right. We talked about college football semifinals. They were fantastic. Let's go ahead and switch gears and talk about NFL wildcard weekend, because if you are a football fan, both college and NFL, which I am, you got to witness 4 straight incredible days, and we got a 5th tonight. By the way, the Vikings do play the Rams, but because of the California wildfires, and my thoughts and prayers go out to the victims and those people in Southern California that has been displaced from the California wildfires, the NFL has decided to move the game, which was originally going to be at SoFi Stadium tonight, to State Farm Arena in Glendale, Arizona. State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona, where they will take on the Minnesota Vikings. Let's go ahead and talk about the Saturday games for NFL Wildcard Weekend. And we're going to talk about the Houston Texans getting another wildcard win in their first game. They win the division. They're considered an underdog. This is what they did against the Browns last year. And then they ran into a buzzsaw against the Baltimore Ravens. Well, now the Houston Texans, they might be running into a buzzsaw getting to play the Kansas City Chiefs on Saturday, but another playoff blunder by the Los Angeles Chargers. Remember 2 years ago when they were up 27-0 on the Jacksonville Jaguars? Well, this was a game where Justin Herbert, which I put him in the same category as Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, he's not quite there yet. He's in that second tier, because he throws 4 interceptions. Look, the Chargers need some wide receivers. If Ladd McConkey is your best wide receiver, we have a problem. He is a slot receiver. You need to go get a Keenan Allen, which they let go to the Bears. You need to go get a big-time wide receiver. Why couldn't they get DeAndre Hopkins? Why couldn't they get Odell Beckham Jr.? You got to get a physical, skilled wide receiver. Some teams even have 2 or 3. The Chargers really don't have any. I love Ladd McConkey. He went to Georgia, but he cannot be your number 1 option. He is a great slot receiver. And the Chargers, I kind of think they fumbled the bag on this one. This was a game that they should have won, and they could not get the job done against the Houston Texans. You got to give credit to the Houston Texans, who I felt kind of stumbled in the regular season to get to the playoffs, because they had a playoff home game because the division is horrible. But C.J. Stroud able to get the job done. Tank Dell had a pretty good game, but the Texans are decimated by injuries. Stephon Diggs, you have some, Nico Collins, you have Tank Dell. You have some injuries out there for the Houston Texans. I'm just looking at the box score. Tank Dell is the receiver that got hurt and is out for the season, a gruesome injury. It was Nico Collins who had 7 receptions and 122 yards and a touchdown. Cade Stover, remember he used to play at Ohio State. Xavier Hutchinson, Joe Mixon ran for 106 yards. The Houston Texans, they figured it out. Will Anderson, Mario Edwards on that D-line, D'Amico Autry. Got some great players, and I love D'Amico Ryans as a coach, but I think that the Houston Texans are going to have their hands full next week when they will take on the Kansas City Chiefs. That will be the first game of the divisional playoffs. I just think it's going to be too much of a task for the Houston Texans. All right, let's look at the nightcap on Saturday, where the Baltimore Ravens end up defeating the Pittsburgh Steelers, and now Coach Mike Tomlin has lost 8 straight playoff games, and he's going to be retained, but, there's some Pittsburgh Steelers fans that are grumbling that maybe it's time for a change. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers have only had 3 coaches in the last 60 years. I mean, back to when they had Chuck Noll. I mean, it's been a while. I mean, the Steelers don't get rid of coaches, because you saw how long Bill Cowher was there, and now you have Mike Tomlin. But this was really a testament on how dominant the Baltimore Ravens are, which, by the way, the Buffalo Bills are going to have their hands full in the divisional round next week, because Baltimore had Lamar Jackson, was absolutely incredible. I mean, he was efficient, 2 touchdown passes. Derrick Henry with 2 touchdown runs. Now, I think that Derrick Henry, if it wasn't for Saquon Barkley and what he has done in Philly, Derrick Henry would probably be the best free agent acquisition. I think it's 1 and 2. I think what Derrick Henry has done to help the Baltimore Ravens, who struggled a little bit, in the regular season, losing to the Raiders and losing to the Browns. But I think that the Baltimore Ravens are poised to possibly get a road victory against the Buffalo Bills next week. Speaking of those Bills, they had no problem against the Denver Broncos. Look, the Broncos is a nice story. I like Bo Nix. He is the future, the quarterback for Denver. And remember, this franchise who last made the playoffs when they won the Super Bowl back in the 2015 season, you bring in Sean Payton. It didn't work out with Russell Wilson last year. They traded him away. You thought that this was going to be just a terrible season for the Denver Broncos, but I thought that Bo Nix played well enough to be the starter next year. He is the quarterback of the future. Remember, they got off to that hot start. Tony Franklin, 43-yard pass from Bo Nix, and they were able to get up 7-0. But I think that the Buffalo Bills, because of the balanced attack of James Cook running the football and Josh Allen, who had 2 touchdown passes, and then, you have players like Curtis Samuel getting the job done, and Buffalo was able to get the 31-7 victory over the Denver Broncos. They will play the Baltimore Ravens in the divisional round next week. So the stage is set. The Bills and the Ravens will play Sunday night, the CBS game at 6:30. Jim Nantz and Tony Romo on the call. And the Houston Texans will kick things off for divisional round, taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. That will be on ESPN and ABC, 4:30. I know I'm probably going to be at the Marion County Chatco game. I'll probably be watching that game on my phone. And then you also have the NFC, the Commanders taking on the Lions. Let's talk about the NFC. All right, we're going to start with the 4:30 game, where I was not impressed by the Philadelphia Eagles. Look, Green Bay lost all their receivers. Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, all gone. It was Josh Jacobs who carried the Packers, which almost got the victory. Even when Philly was up 16-13, Green Bay cut it to 16-10. And is there anything more automatic than the tush push? On a 3rd and 1, the Eagles decided to throw a long ball, a bomb, and it was incomplete. Now we got a 4th and 1, and you knew what was going to happen. You knew that O-line that has 3 Pro Bowlers. Remember, Jason Kelsey ended up retiring last year, but they still have Landon Dickerson, Lane Johnson, who could be one of the best right tackles in the history of the game. The Eagles' O-line with Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts, they looked unstoppable, but 22-10, situationally, the Eagles looked unstoppable. But 22-10, I was not impressed with the score, especially since the Green Bay Packers were missing key wide receivers. And if you're missing key wide receivers, you're going to make mistakes as a quarterback, and Jordan Love made mistakes. Look, it was just a bad break for the Green Bay Packers this year. You know, they fall to the number 7 seed. They had Minnesota and Detroit in their way. You knew that they were going to go on the road, and this was an up-and-coming team that won as a 7 seed last year. And now, since they expanded the playoff format, the 7 seed has lost every single game with the exception of the Dallas Cowboys losing to the Green Bay Packers last year. Philly moves on, but I was not impressed. I was actually more impressed with Philly's defense. I thought that the defense really stepped up. The former Georgia Bulldog Nolan Smith ended up having 2 sacks. You had Nakobe Dean with 2 tackles for loss. So it looks like those players that the Eagles got in the NFL draft that helped the Georgia Bulldogs win back-to-back national titles are starting to pay dividends for this Eagles defense led by defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. And last year, the Eagles defense couldn't stop anybody. Now, all of a sudden, the Eagles are relying on their defense. That's going to be a dangerous combo for the Philadelphia Eagles, who will await the winner of tonight's game between the Rams and the Vikings. Let's talk about that Sunday night game that happened last night. The Washington Commanders, well, they go into Tampa, and they get a 23-20 victory over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who won the division, and it was another home playoff game. This time, the Buccaneers end up falling, and this was just a testament on how good Jaden Daniels is and Terry McLaurin. And the Washington Commanders capitalized on a blunder by Baker Mayfield when he fumbled the football. Tampa had the lead. They were up 17-13, and then Washington gets the big turnover. Terry McLaurin, a pass from Jaden Daniels. The key is Jaden Daniels, no mistakes. I mean, Baker Mayfield didn't throw an interception either, but they were having to deal with Mike Evans and the corner, Marshawn Lattimore, for Washington. The Washington Commanders end up getting the road victory. It's their first playoff win since 2005. It's been 20 years since the Washington Commanders have won a playoff game. And remember that team that had Mark Brunell, and that was just an incredible team. And the Washington Commanders will face the Detroit Lions on Saturday. Looking forward to that game. I don't think that the Commanders, I don't think they beat the Lions. The Lions are just too skilled, too powerful. It's not going to be easy for the Washington Commanders, but a good win. And how about Dan Quinn? I mean, Dan Quinn took the Falcons to the Super Bowl in his second year. He gets fired. He learns, becomes the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. I think that Dan Quinn doesn't have the success he has unless he brings along Cliff Kingsbury as the OC. And Jaden Daniels, in my opinion, he's been the best rookie quarterback so far. He wins a playoff game. The future is bright for Jaden Daniels. But I think that the Washington Commanders are going to have a tough time next week against the Detroit Lions. Some other NFL news, we had some coaching changes. The Falcons defensive coordinator, Jimmy Lake, is out. This was a defense that brought in Justin Simmons. They had Matthew Judon. They had Jesse Bates from last year. You had Caden Ellis, the leading tackler, A.J. Terrell. They had talent everywhere on the defense, but it seemed like the defense could not bail the Falcons out, and Jimmy Lake ends up becoming the scapegoat and gets fired. Remember, Raheem Morris is a defensive guy. He was the defensive coordinator that led the Rams to that Super Bowl along with Aaron Donald and that great defense. But the Atlanta Falcons are going to retain Raheem Morris. If you're going to go for somebody, you got to get a home run hire on the defense. You got to get a big-time defensive coordinator to try to solidify this defense that pretty much underachieved. I mean, this was a team that I thought that they were going to be build off a great defense, and that was not the case. And now the Falcons have to go back to the drawing board. Mike Vrabel, he is now the Patriots' new head coach. He had all that success in Tennessee. Tennessee just decides to let him go. Why didn't the Patriots get him last year? You have a one-and-done coach in Gerard Mayo, and then all of a sudden the Patriots decide to get Mike Vrabel, which should have happened last year, but now he does have the quarterback of the future in Drake May. They do have a top 5 pick. I think this is a very good hire for Robert Kraft and the New England organization. But that division is just going to continue getting tougher as long as the Buffalo Bills are in that division. I think that the dominance that the Patriots had with Bill Belichick, part of it was because the division was terrible. But now the Buffalo Bills are the class act in that division, and you know that the Dolphins are going to be better because Mike McDaniels is a good coach. I don't know what the Jets are going to do. I think that they might go to Aaron Glenn. They might bring back Rex Ryan, but you know that Aaron Rodgers' days is finished in New York. So we'll see what happens in this division. But a good hire, Mike Vrabel going to the New England Patriots. And please let this happen. As a San Francisco 49ers fan, I would love to see the return of former defensive coordinator Robert Saleh. He went on to become the New York Jets head coach. He got fired this season. The 49ers ended up firing another defensive coordinator. They're going to have 3 defensive coordinators in the last 3 years with the talent they have on the defense, with Nick Bosa, Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner, even though they're going to have to pay some of these players because Brock Purdy is going to get a big contract. They did leave. They did let Javon Hargrove go, but this team is just not the same if Nick Bosa is not in the lineup. You got to go get Robert Saleh. I think that Robert Saleh would solidify this defense. And by the way, the 49ers have a very easy schedule next year because they play the teams in the AFC South, the NFC South, and they play all the last-place teams. All right, let's go and take our first break. And then when we come back, we've got some local stuff that we've got to talk about here in Columbus, including the Columbus River Dragons. CSU Cougars and Lady Cougars are in action tonight because that game got postponed because of the ice storms. And then we've got high school basketball, Carver Spencer. We've got the Heritage Bowl basketball edition. That place looked jam-packed. I wish I was there, but I had a work obligation. But I will talk about those games that Thrift Barringer and Coach Corey Black broadcasted on the Georgia-Alabama Sports Live Facebook page and YouTube channel. You don't want to go anywhere. It is the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, and we'll be back after this.
Help protect your family from flu this season by taking 3 easy steps. First, get yourself and your family a flu shot. It's quick and can protect you all season. Second, take everyday actions to help prevent the spread of germs like flu. Cover your cough, stay home from work or school if you're sick, and wash your hands often. Third, there are drugs that can treat flu illness. These work best when started early. Learn more at cdc.gov/fightflu.
And we are back here on the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia-Alabama Sports Live. I've been doing this podcast for 5 years now. I've been a part of Georgia-Alabama Sports Live since its inception on June of 2023. Before that, I was helping Thrift Barringer call games off his Facebook page, and the rest is history. We have just been growing, and we continue getting producers and on-air talent, and I'm glad to be a part of the ride. I'm also glad to be a part of the ride for Sports Visions. A huge announcement that was broke early morning with DJ Jones on a Sunday conversation with Chuck Williams on WRBL. And Thrift Barringer also broke the announcement yesterday on the Georgia-Alabama Sports Live show. We will have a special show tonight bringing in DJ Jones just to talk about the Sports Visions morning show, which local sports talk radio in Columbus 5 days a week is back. For the first time since March of 2020, we have got local sports talk radio 5 days a week in Columbus. And it's been a while, but I don't know the last time they had a morning show that was local talking sports in Columbus. I know that back in the early 2010s, they had the Press Box with Bobby Z and friends. And then in 2017, we had the Sports Zone with Stephen Williams. And then in 2019, we had Sports Unleashed with Bam and Reggie Reg. And then after the pandemic, it was done. No more local sports talk in Columbus 5 days a week. 95.7 ESPN Radio still does ESPN Radio, and they do have their fantastic Friday night high school football with Aunt Merritt and Coach Michael Woods. But I'm here to tell you, this is a game changer because not only 92.1 has Fox Sports Radio with Dan Patrick, Colin Cowherd, also, you're going to get Thrift Behringer and DJ Jones, two of the best in the business, every morning, 6 to 9, Monday through Friday. And I'm just excited that I get to be a part of this show, maybe as a guest coming on every now and then. I love being on the radio. This has always been a goal of mine to get back on the radio. And I appreciate Thrift Behringer and DJ Jones giving me that opportunity every step of the way, because that has been a lifelong dream of mine to do local sports talk radio. And I think I've been pushing myself a little bit harder because when I started this podcast 5 years ago, when it got picked up on WQEE 3 years ago, I was really pushing the guest list because I was trying to get a show out. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't love to have guests. I would love to have guests back on the show. If you want to be a guest, you can message me. Just reach out to me. I will get you on the show. Right now, I've established myself as a local sports talk show host where I really don't need a guest. Plus, I'm not on WQEE anymore, so I do this 3 days a week just to keep this thing going because I want to get to 1,000 episodes. That has been a goal of mine, but I'm also privileged to be a part of Georgia Alabama Sports Live, where Thrift Behringer and I do the Georgia Alabama Sports Live show every Sunday night and Wednesday night, and we also have our Inside the GIAA show. So that's a lot going on, and don't forget, in February, we got high school basketball and baseball going on, and you know I love to be a part of that. We had a busy weekend in high school basketball. Now, some games got shifted up to Thursday because of the inclement weather. Some games got canceled altogether, including Kendrick and Sumter County. But the Carver-Hardaway game we were supposed to do on Georgia Alabama Sports Live got pushed all the way up to Thursday. And by the way, CVCC Pirates and Lady Pirates in action on Thursday night, and that was great just to see them showcased. And they were the only game that was broadcast on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And it's great to see the Pirates and Lady Pirates get that coverage and not have to compete with other high schools that are being live streamed. But, yeah, it was great. All right. So Carver ends up defeating Hardaway, the Carver boys, and then Hardaway girls ended up defeating Carver. But the game of the night, Saturday night, there was not an empty seat at Richard Mahome Gymnasium, Warren Beulah Court. The Carver Tigers and Lady Tigers. Let's start with the Carver Lady Tigers. They've had a very tough schedule, lost a lot of seniors. They were able to get the 64-53 victory over the Spencer Lady Green Wave. And Carver right now, they look like they could be the second best team in this region. Now, they're going to have a tough game next Friday. Thrift Behringer is going to be on the call. They're taking on Sumter County, which right now Sumter County is undefeated in the region. And Sumter County, they got a fantastic player named Justine Scott. I've had the privilege of seeing her twice on Georgia Alabama Sports Live, once against Shaw and then the other time against Spencer. This is going to be a fantastic matchup. And then the Carver boys, complete dominance, 77-23 over a very good Spencer Green Wave team. But that just tells you how good Carver is. They are ranked number 1 according to Kyle Sandy and Sandy Spell, and they look to be the favorites to win the 2A state title. They don't just have the offensive scoring of Tony Montgomery, who, by the way, is an overall player. The Troy commit can also steal, pass, block shots, play a little defense. That's why he's going to go play basketball for the Troy Trojans. They also have Tobias Tolbert, who's averaging 15 points a game, and he's putting up 3-4 shot blocks a game. He had 7 shot blocks in that game against Spencer. And they have the freshman phenom TJ Woodson. They got Tristan Givens and Jacoby Caslin, who came over just in time from the football championship. And Coach Eric Allen, who was an assistant, and he has been just absolutely incredible as the lead guy. and getting the Carver Tigers to the state championship, where they went to the Final Four last year as a 3A school. But Eric Allen, just an outstanding. He was a former Spencer coach that has a championship back in 2022. Now he is the guy that can lead the Carver Tigers to glory and win their first state championship since 2019, when Warren Beulah was the coach and led the Carver Tigers to the state championship. Some of the other games, we're going to start with the girls. The Harris County Lady Tigers ended up defeating Manchester 78-30. We had Schley County end up defeating Brookstone 49-30, and Hardaway ends up defeating Shaw 71-38. We had Columbus ended up defeating Jordan with the Kendrick. Sumter County game got postponed. Park Crossing, Auburn and Russell County got postponed. Park Crossing, Russell County got shifted to today. And let's talk about the men's, the boys' teams. All right, the Manchester Blue Devils. This is a rivalry renewed, but they were way too much for the Harris County Tigers. Manchester, led by their coach, DeMonte Prather, went to the state championship last year, lost to Green Forest. They ended up defeating Harris County 88-31. We had Chatco end up getting the win over Webster County. Macon County, who's one of the top teams in Class 1A Division II, ends up getting the 59-51 win over Marion County. And by the way, we will be on the call for Marion County Chatco, as this is rivalry week. We're going to include that in the rivalry along with Lee Scott Glenwood, Brookstone Pacelli. It's going to be fantastic. You know, it really started with Carver Spencer, and we're leading up to Chatco, Marion County. Brookstone ends up getting the 52-49 victory over Schley County, and Calvary ends up to Wiregrass 76-54. So this Tuesday on Georgia Alabama Sports Live, Thrift Barrage and I all for Calvary, Brookstone, starting with the girls at 6, and then 30 will be into the boys. Hardaway region win over their rival Shaw, 59-53. And we do have some other games to talk about today. On the road, by County Northside is going to be hosting Jonesboro, and Jordan is going to be hosting Sumter County. That game got moved today as well. Speaking of a game that is going to get moved to today, Columbus State will take on Georgia. Girls will start. The game was postponed, was supposed to be on Saturday. It got moved to today, as both teams fresh off of huge victories over Georgia Southwestern State University in Peach Belt Conference play. And the Columbus River Dragons split a 2-game series with the leading division leader, the Carolina Thunderbirds. On Friday, Columbus got the 5-2 victory at the Columbus Civic Center. Carolina turned around on Saturday, and they ended up getting the 5-3 victory over Columbus. Right now, Carolina has 52 points. They are in first place in the Continental Division, and Columbus has got 51 points. The leading goal scorer, he played 15 games with Watertown, but Chywith Blacksmith has 11 goals on the season in the FPHL. He's got 2 goals in 2 games so far. This is a big pickup for the Columbus River Dragons. But right now, the overall goal scorer for the Columbus River Dragons is the rookie sensation Ryan Hunter, who has 10 goals on the season. I know that Coach Boom Boom Bouchard has got a team that's ready to go. I think that they can win an FPHL championship. That is the goal. They have not won a championship since 2021. That was when there was 4 teams. It was COVID, but they did win that championship. It was called the Ignite Cup. The championship is a championship. They still hang the banner in the Columbus Civic Center, and I'm excited about that. Don't forget, we are a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting to spring training, which means sometime in March, we will have an idea of who will be on the roster for the Columbus Cleanstones. I promise you this, on the Sports Beat, I will be breaking down all the games in the Southern League. I will make sure that I give you the coverage on every single game for the Columbus Cleanstones. Remember, their home opener will be April the 15th at Synovus Park, where they will take on the Pensacola Blue Wahoos. I hope to be there in attendance. I'm trying to get media credentials, hopefully for Georgia Alabama Sports Live. We would love to interview players, coaches, the GM, Pete Lavin. We would just love to interview everybody that's part of the Columbus Cleanstones. And have they named a play-by-play announcer yet? I would like to meet him and find out his broadcasting background, because I think that's incredible that we're going to get another broadcasting talent to be in the Fountain City. He would be great to get on the show and talk Columbus Cleanstones. All right, we're going to go ahead and take another break. And when we come back, I'm going to close out this show with a little NBA and college basketball. You don't want to go anywhere. It's a Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. We'll be back after this.
When you really need something to get you through a long graduation ceremony, Trolley Sour Gummy Worms are there to give you a thrill. With varieties like Trolley Sour Bursting Crawlers, the worm's soft and chewy texture, surprising flavor combinations, and neon bright colors will give everyone a reason to celebrate. So when you want to notch the festivities up a couple degrees, Trolley Sour Gummy Worms are the perfect way for everyone to celebrate. Shop now for any trolley that crawls your way.
All right, we are back here on the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Over the weekend, we had some local teams in college basketball. Unfortunately, SMU ends up defeating Georgia Tech 93-71 in Dallas. Georgia Tech falls to 8-9 on the season. They're having a tough time in the ACC. By the way, Cooper Flagg, he has a season high, a career high, 42 points for the freshman phenom, who is projected to be the number one overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft. I don't know. I think there's some NBA teams that might be tanking for Cooper, as that is what they're calling it. I still am a firm believer that the SEC is the best conference in college basketball. Georgia ends up getting a huge 72-62 victory at Stegman Coliseum against Oklahoma. Oklahoma was ranked 17th. Georgia is now 14-2 on the season, as you had Asa Newell, who is projected to be a lottery pick with 15 points. Folks, if Georgia does not get in the top 25 after this huge win over a ranked team, they already beat Kentucky. Now they beat Oklahoma. I don't know what to expect anymore. They did get some votes for the top 25, but this is a tournament team. Georgia's going to make the NCAA tournament. Meanwhile, Auburn, they get a scare on the road in Columbia, South Carolina, but they win 66-63. Auburn is now 15-1 on the season. They got a tough road victory against Texas. Now they get a tough road victory over South Carolina. And when the new rankings come out, I expect the Auburn Tigers to be ranked number one, especially after Tennessee loses by 30 to Florida. Tennessee barely got by Texas 74-70. And Alabama ends up defeating Texas A&M on the road. A big win for the team that went to the Final Four last year. And Mark Sears is one of those players that could be a Naismith finalist. And then Kentucky gets a big win on the road against Mississippi State. This is going to be fun to see how many teams can make the NCAA tournament from the SEC. Meanwhile, here's some games that are happening on Tuesday. We got a big one at Rupp Arena. Texas A&M taking on Kentucky. Alabama hosting Ole Miss. Auburn is hosting Mississippi State at Neville Arena, but they're more than likely going to be without Janai Broome. Now, the x-rays came back negative. He does have a sprained ankle. He is out indefinitely. This is a huge loss, but I still think Auburn is a deep team. When you want Janai Broome, you need him back when it comes to conference play in NCAA tournament time. Auburn, I feel, is the best team in college basketball right now. Now, whether or not they win an NCAA title, I mean, when you go up against the likes of Kansas and Duke and Michigan State, teams that have been there, I know that Coach Bruce Pearl had got them to the Final Four back in 2019. And they've had some talented players that are playing in the NBA now, like Jabari Smith Jr. and Walker Kessler. But this Auburn team relies on Janai Broome to be that defensive stopper and get you 20. He's a double-double just about every night. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the Auburn Tigers can do. And same with Alabama. I mean, who would have thought that a basketball game between Alabama and Auburn could be just as exciting and intense as a football game between Alabama and Auburn, as we'll get the Iron Bowl basketball edition a couple times this season. All right. This has really been a fun show, but I got one more segment before I close this show. We had some NBA action over the weekend. The Atlanta Hawks were supposed to host the Houston Rockets, but that game got postponed due to the weather conditions in Atlanta. So I hope everybody is safe in Atlanta. I mean, we had the Grizzlies ended up defeating the Minnesota Timberwolves 127-125. The team that I really want to highlight, and the team that has really been on fire, are those Sacramento Kings. After Doug Christie has taken over as the interim coach, the Sacramento Kings are now 20-19 after defeating the Chicago Bulls 124-119. DeMar DeRozan facing his former team. You have De'Aaron Fox, DeMar DeRozan, and you have Domantas Sabonis. All three players are averaging over 20 points a game. The Sacramento Kings are explosive on offense, and right now, the Kings would be a playoff team. And guess what? The Golden State Warriors would not. So it's safe to say that the Warriors dynasty is officially over. I've been saying that since the beginning of the season. I thought that maybe the Golden State Warriors, with the addition of Buddy Hield, would be a playoff team. And right now, they will reschedule those Lakers and Clippers games that were canceled because of the California wildfires. That will be today, and we really need basketball in LA. I mean, I know they want to play. I feel bad for J.J. Redick losing his house in the Pacific Palisades, but the Lakers and Clippers, we need to play sports in LA because of the healing process. I know that Pepperdine was supposed to have a game. Malibu actually has been a site where local firefighters and emergency responders have been, putting their equipment there. I know that Malibu is just on the outside of the Pacific Palisades, and I called it. I knew that game against Loyola Marymount that was supposed to play at the Firestone Fieldhouse on Saturday got canceled, and that's the right decision. I have friends that went to Pepperdine. I just reaching out to that community. I've got family members down in Southern California. My heart goes out to the community of Southern California and those California wildfires who have been just absolutely devastating. But it's a healing process. Pray for the workers that they're able to contain that fire and we can get back to business as usual and they could rebuild LA and it could be better than ever. All right, well, that has been our show here on the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. Be sure to like, subscribe to the Facebook channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm also found on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget, Wednesday's show is going to be on the Georgia Alabama Sports Live Facebook page and YouTube channel. That's going to be at 5 o'clock. And then we're going to have the Pacelli Coaches Show, the Muskogee County Coaches Show. And then I will be back on the airwaves on Friday, back here on my Facebook page and YouTube channel. All right. Thanks for tuning in. And we will see you next time. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
At Jersey Mike's, they slice your order fresh right in front of you. And let me tell you, watching that can send a rush of emotions through a person. Excitement, impatience, baby-like wonder, indecisive, anticipatory chewing, nervous pacing, happy claps, and finally, jealousy. Because that's this guy's sub. I should order one. Good idea.
Sliced right in front of you. It's a Jersey Mike's thing. A sub above.